Hey everyone, this is Psychedelic Actualization. On this channel we talk about topics like self-realization, self-actualization and working with psychedelics to live a more authentic and fulfilling life. Are you guys ready for the fourth part and probably the last one of my story of the dark night of the soul, of my spiritual crisis, of positive disintegration, of a creative breakdown, however you want to call and label an experience that cannot be put into language, which is not able to fit into a category, because any experience is not feasible for any category of language, because our experience is so much beyond language. But well, let's get into it. If you haven't watched the last 3 parts of how I got into the crisis, my different ways of looking at the crisis, research, and how I felt, then you can click right here to watch the start of this video series, of the story of my spiritual emergency caused by a very unresponsible and dangerous kind of psychedelic combination. Good, let's continue. It's been probably like a month since I've been in this state, maybe a little bit longer even, and I still feel considerably high. I am like, the visual component is still there, the emotional component is still there, and I'm slowly feeling ready to look into that state, to face this state, to work with that state, to come to a resolution, to finally come to a place of peace in this state. Because instead of running away, what I've been kind of doing in the first week, definitely consciously, and then even in the weeks afterwards, I was unconsciously running away in certain ways from looking into that experience. I feel ready to now look into it. And it's actually something that's coming up. In this video we're going to talk about my numerology reading, an ICS psychotherapy session that I had, support session, psychedelic integration support session, and Chinese medicine, and also a rainbow gathering and what I've discovered there. But also breathwork session is coming up for me in the next coming month. I'm gonna have like 5 or 6 very deep and intense breathwork sessions to slowly look into that state and maybe come to a resolution of this spiritual emergency, if there is such a thing as resolution. I don't want to put too many words or hopes in my mouth, because every time I kind of came to a point where I was like, yeah, I can enjoy this, I can manage this. Sometimes it just hit me full on harder again. And one way I was also ready to look into the state was a peyote ceremony. I booked a peyote ceremony because I was like, oh, maybe like in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, this state is kind of going to resolve itself and then I'm going to be able to work with psychedelics again. Yeah, like not really. Inside me I was just too uncertain in my state, and the intensity of the state was still so immense that I was like, okay, let's not do a peyote ceremony, let's go and travel to a rainbow gathering instead. So that's what I did. I traveled from Germany, drove down to Spain to a rainbow gathering, and what happened? I felt sick again. I just came out of this other thickness, was healthy for a week or 2, and then I felt sick again. For the whole vacation, for like 2 weeks, I was very sick, I had fever, I was feeling very bad, but the state was still there. It was still very hard to distinguish again between the state of the sickness and the state of my spiritual crisis, but the state was still there. It was still very much noticeable. And I want to read you something from my journal from these times at the rainbow gathering, of something that was just going through and going on in my mind. So I was writing down, it's like, I can do everything. I can function in life, in reality. I can interact normally with other people. Everything is as it was. but still everything has changed. Nothing is as it was, even though everything is. The challenges that we face in spiritual emergency, in the dark night of the soul, sometimes can seem like normal human challenges, but their significance is vastly different. The immensity of their significance kind of feels so much deeper than the surface level normal human problems that kind of seem to be identical to those we face in times of spiritual crisis, which is very interesting. I wrote down, I seem to be searching for my old self, my baseline level of consciousness, the state I was in before the experience started. But I can't find it. It doesn't exist. There's nothing to go back to. Because the self, the personality, the construction of my ego seems groundless. There's nothing to hold on to or to go back to. That was a very deep realization, and it brought with it a lot of grief, and the suffering that I was feeling before kind of came into a context with this insight and this process of thinking. Another note I did for myself is how to find a balance between taking action towards resolving the state, paying attention to it and actively searching for solutions, being on this quest of resolving the issue, or just leaving it, just going back to normal life, to normal job, not paying attention to it as much and just living life, taking it on. What's the right balance? And also, what's the right balance to telling everybody all the time about this special, intense, crazy state that I'm in, or holding it back and kind of dealing with it for myself? Because the sharing is kind of part of the healing, but also I don't want to share too much. I don't want to put the focus on this state in every situation with every human being, because this seems to be an act of self-centeredness and kind of putting the importance of myself way above of what it actually is. Because what the state is showing me is that I am nothing. And then kind of pulling it out and screaming that I am somebody who has a problem, I am somebody who's going through a special, intense, dark night of the soul, Kundalini energy awakening, spiritual emergency. That didn't seem or didn't feel right for me as well. But also just completely taking it in for myself and not sharing it with anybody of what is going on didn't seem right as well. So finding a balance and dancing in between those two extremes seemed to be very important. And then I wrote down, I don't know how to balance it, and does it even matter to ask these questions? I had a weird experience as well during the Rainbow Gathering. So I was kind of sick, so I was still in the state of sickness a little bit, but also I was in this state, and then this fear came back of losing my control over my stable state of consciousness. So and everything that happened that was kind of unusual, which could have been just normal as well without being in this intense state, I kind of related it back to my spiritual crisis. And everything kind of that was kind of a little bit unusual, I related it back to that state and overemphasized the relationship between what happened to the state of spiritual crisis, which is very interesting, because is it related or is it not? I don't know. So for example, one thing that happened at the Rainbow is I was blowing my nose very, very hard. And then while I was blowing my nose, kind of my whole perceptual field of reality started to fragment. And it was kind of the start of an DMT trip, and everything started to fragment. And I got really dizzy on the brink of passing out, kind of. And it took like a minute or 2 or 3 to kind of to put the fragments back together of my perceptual field of consciousness. And I was like, what what is this? And even that kind of, I was like, is it just because of the sickness? Is it because of my state of consciousness, the non-ordinary state of consciousness? I don't know, and I'm afraid that I will completely lose my shit if I just blow my nose. So that was an interesting experience, an interesting observation. So sickness was going after 2 weeks, and my state came back stronger again. I was like, great, here we go again. Tinnitus still there, very loud, very intense, vibrating still there in the body, but I kind of got more used to it. The thing that affected me most was the emotional intensity. The emotional turmoil was still going on, and it was just the suffering and the emotional labor involved in being in this crazy state of consciousness for like 2 months straight without having a break. It was just mind-boggling to me of like how could it be that such an experience, one experience of psychedelics, well, it was a very unusual, very dangerous one, could have such long-lasting effects, such an intense change in my state for such a long time. The intensity of it just completely blew my mind and is still mind-blowing to me. Absolutely insane. And like, yeah, things affected me more. Like, for example, I broke down the computer of my friend, of my roommate, while he was in Japan. And I was close to a panic attack of having apparently destroyed his computer. Unfortunately, it was not completely gone, all the data and everything. But I was on the brink of a panic attack. That affected me a lot. And just fear came up still, again and again. The fear of things falling apart, of me maybe losing friends, losing significant relationships of mine. I imagined kind of, I put myself into weird scenarios of like, what would happen if this relationship was not there? If I lose that friend, if I lose that part of my family, and kind of imagining everything falling apart and then being in this state of spiritual crisis completely alone. It was an interesting thought experiment and imagination of having to go through all that without all my significant others who are kind of my support system. And I know that there are people who are going through such difficult phases without such a support system. And I know you could do that. Definitely I could. And there could be a lot of potential for new experiences. But still, kind of thinking about that just brought up a lot of fear as well. Also, yeah, fear of not being able to handle or complete this process. And also fear of losing my purpose. Because I've been kind of building the foundation of my life on my self-proclaimed purpose, which is kind of working on enlightenment and then through my awakening kind of spreading the love out, especially in the psychedelic community, helping people with self-actualization and self-realization through the work of psychedelics. And now that I've put myself in this crazy crisis through psychedelics, this whole foundation kind of had a big earthquake and was just shaken up so much that I feel like it fell apart, this foundation that I built my life on. And my sense of security was built on that vision. And that kind of was shaken a lot. Then I also had an ICS integration call. Very interesting, the ICS integration call. It's a free support network. You can book free psychedelic integration sessions with them, which is absolutely amazing. They do great work. I can recommend them. At least the one person I spoke to was very skilled. It was a woman and she was having experience in psychotherapy, and that was very interesting because that kind of integration session was focused on the past. And usually I don't like to focus on the past so much. I'm more like, okay, I find myself in this state, what can I do with it? How can I move forward? How can I work with it or transcend it? But she was pulling the attention and the awareness into the past, into reconsidering my approach to psychedelic work, questioning, how did I end up in this experience? How did I put myself in a potential near-death experience through intense psychedelic work? One phrase that came up for her was, passion can kill you. Like, I'm so passionate about moving so fast into deeper and deeper states of realization through psychedelics that I actually put myself onto the edge of physical danger, of losing my life. And when is the point reached that I'm too close to the edge? What is the appropriate distance to the edge? How do we define the edge of actual physical death or maybe psychological insanity? How do we balance that? And why do I want to go so deeply into that experience? My answer was, reflecting upon it, I want to fully surrender to God. That was my intention for going into these intense experiences. I want to just fully surrender into Him. And then asking the questions, why is that not possible without the psychedelics? Or at least without putting myself in physical danger? And then in my mind, I was working through stuff. I was kind of blaming the MDMA for it. Of like, oh, the euphoria of the MDMA led me to put myself into that dangerous situation because I was not reflective upon what is reasonable and what is not. But actually the responsibility is on myself. And then, just reflecting upon that was very valuable. Why did I seek to go so fast past the limits? Why do I seek to push the limits so intensely? And why am I not patient enough to actually go the slow path? Or where is the balance between that? And when do I go too far? So very interesting questions to look into the past. And then also this blockage was still there, the blockage to share the experience with you, to talk about the experience and put it out openly onto this YouTube channel and kind of connect it to my work as well, because of all the shame that came up, this deep shame of having done what I have done and not being a great example for people, but actually recognizing that I have made a mistake, that I have put myself into a bad and dangerous place. Relatively, ultimately everything is good, but still relatively I had this feeling of shame. And then everything I built my foundations on, as I said, the purpose was shaking a lot. And maybe I need to rebuild the foundation of my life onto a deeper source, not just the self-proclaimed purpose of working with psychedelics, but maybe an actual connection to the divine source of being itself, and building that up through real, true spiritual practice, sustained levels of connection to the source and to the truth of all. That could be the foundation I realized for myself that I can build my life on, because that's kind of the core root that I can truly build my life on, not some activity or some purpose or some vision that I want to achieve in this body, in this world. So and the question is as well, when do I feel ready? Am I gonna feel ever ready again to go into a psychedelic experience? We're gonna discuss that in the next video, which is gonna talk about my current state of being, where I am standing at, and what I've learned from this experience of going through these times of crisis, through this dark night of the soul. So definitely subscribe and stay tuned for that. And how do I manage to recommit to my path and also to this YouTube channel? to maybe working with psychedelics? Do I want to even? Or is it just too much? Is even the spiritual path right for me in this lifetime? These questions are going through my mind because it's such an immensity of a task. And I always felt ready to take that on. But now in these times of incredible difficulty, of deepest suffering, I am questioning if I really want to, or if I want to go the path of looking away, ignoring it, which is very hard once you've started on this path of living a mundane life, being able to live with pleasure. And that is something that came up in this session. But no rush to come to any conclusions. That was my conclusion. Everything is okay. I am still alive. And that's it. That's fine. It is fine the way it is. And I am in the right place. I think that's been long enough. We'll do the Kundalini yoga numerology session and the Chinese medicine in a separate video. So it's a little bit of a longer video series. If you want a complete overview about what spiritual emergencies are or spiritual crisis, how to navigate a dark night of the soul or Kundalini awakening, then you can download my workbook. I've put my heart and my soul into this workbook. Everything I've experienced for myself and everything that helped me and other people I've put into that workbook. The mindset, the setting, how to find support and where to find support. Download it. You can download it for free. Link is in the video description or in the comment section down below. I feel very kind of proud to be able to share that so freely and put that gift out into the world. That's it. Let's be present. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Afterwards, in the next couple of weeks, we'll kind of put everything together and kind of put my story aside. And I want to really focus more on using everything that I've learned and putting it into really valuable content about the dark night of the soul, the spiritual path, and working on this path of integration. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Blessings.